Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the 13-game NBA slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Wednesday, December the 23rd. We have a huge slate today, so I don't want to take too much time. You guys know, just to start off though, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. As always, I do appreciate that. I appreciate all the support you guys show me on the YouTube channel. Yesterday's video for the opening night slate did so well, got a ton of views, a ton of likes. I greatly appreciate that, guys. Definitely hit the like button. Let's try and get 300, 400 likes. I think that's something we can do. I do expect there to be a ton of action on this 13-game slate. Big prize pools already. I think we do have like a $1 million contest with 200K to first on DK tonight. So let's dive in. Let's start off at point guard. Obviously, with it being 13 games, I'm not going to talk about every single player. I'm going to try and keep this video probably within like 30 minutes long. I'll just kind of go a quick position by position breakdown, give you my first look, talk about the guys that really stand out to me the most looking at this slate on Tuesday night. So at point guard, you got Harden and Luka, Trae Young, Westbrook, kind of your stud options here. Dame Lillard you could include in that category as well. So starting off with the top two, Harden and Luka. Right now, I think Luka is the guy that I prefer between those two guys, and I think overall Luka is definitely one of the top studs in my opinion, at least just looking at the slate on Tuesday night. We do have a scenario here where Kristaps Porzingis is not healthy right now. He's not expected to play, I believe, for a good while. I think he's going to start playing like in a couple months maybe. I'm not exactly sure when Porzingis is going to be back, but obviously he's out right now. And without Porzingis, it's just going to be the Luka show. I mean, it's already the Luka show, but now with no Porzingis, the ball is going to be in Luka's hands a ton. If you just look at his numbers last year with Porzingis off the floor, I mean, Luka was just a usage monster, averaged like 1.6, 1.7 fantasy points per minute. Gonna play big minutes, we know. Dallas didn't really add anyone during the offseason. I mean, they added Josh Richardson, but I don't expect Josh Richardson to really take usage away from Luka. At 10K, Luka's my top stud on the slate. He's the guy that I want to try and pay up for, at least as of now. And given it's 13 games, there's already, some value that stands out. We're going to have plenty of value to pay up for the stud. So Luka's the guy that I want to try and get in on both sides. Good matchup against Phoenix. One of the highest total games on the slate right now. I definitely like Luka in this spot. I do prefer him over Harden here. Harden, always a guy that has a lot of upside. It will be interesting to see how he plays this year, with John Wall, with DeMarcus Cousins, with Christian Wood. This Houston Rockets team is a little bit different than what they were last year. Whenever Westbrook would miss games last year with the Rockets, like Harden would just go out there and put up 70, 80 DK points. Now that he's playing alongside John Wall, not Porzingis, but he's playing alongside John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Christian Wood. Like, those are guys that, can take shots, that can, those are high usage players. John Wall, we haven't seen in a while, but this is still a really good basketball player in my opinion. A guy that, is a high usage player, can demand the ball. I think we're going to see Harden have big games this year, but he's also probably going to have, some disappointing games as well. I just feel better about Luka right now, especially with no Porzingis. We know it's just going to be the Luka show. So I like him at the top. Trae Young against the Bulls, I think you can always go to, a guy that always has upside. Really, though, there's not much else that stands out at the top, like in terms of, early look. All these guys at the top are in play, but, like, in terms of matchup, projection, the guys that stands out the most, I think it's definitely Luka here. Ben Simmons, I do like just because of the matchup. The Wizards are going to be a team we want to attack. They were so bad defensively last year. I don't expect much to change this year. They were a team that played at a very fast pace, and I think that should continue with Russell Westbrook, as their point guard now. So I do have interest in Ben Simmons. Like other guys in the mid-range that stand out, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is someone that I'm going to be playing a lot this year, I can already tell you. With no Dennis Schroeder, no Chris Paul, both those guys on different teams now. Like, it's just going to be the SGA show this year. He's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. He's going to be a very high-usage player this year and, gets a favorable matchup here against Houston, a team that I expect to play fast. They played at a very fast pace last year, and I don't think much is going to change here. This is definitely one of the better games to target on the slate, just in my opinion. There's a lot of guys I like from both sides of this OKC-Houston game. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, especially with all the other underpriced players that we have. It's tough to pay $7,500 for SGA when you have so many other underpriced guys on this slate, but the dude should be a monster this season, should get a ton of usage, going to have the ball in his hands a ton, should play big minutes on a nightly basis, so he stands out in that mid-range. John Wall as well, at $7,400 I think is too cheap. It's tough to see tough to tell what we're going to get from John Wall. We haven't seen him in so long. He hasn't played in over a year. He didn't play at all last year. He did play in 2018, but I'm not sure. I can't remember how many games he played in 2018 before he got hurt. It's been a while since we've seen John Wall, but he did play one preseason game, I believe, and he looked pretty good. Had 21 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds over 24 minutes. The guy can be productive, or it looks like he did play a few more than one preseason game, but the guy can be productive. I like the matchup against OKC. At 7,400, I think John Wall has upside to pay off this price tag. Obviously, playing alongside James Harden is not great for John Wall because we know James Harden is a very high-usage player, but you should get minutes with Wall on the court without Harden. I'm sure you're going to see Harden and Wall's minutes staggered, just like they did with Russell Westbrook. One of those two guys is going to be on the floor at all times between Harden and Wall. So at 7,400, I do like John Wall quite a bit in the 7K range. Him and SGA, I think, are the two guys that really stand out there the most. But then scrolling down, Drew Holiday on this Milwaukee team, how is he going to fit with Milwaukee? He's definitely underpriced at 6,900 for the talent that he has. Obviously, playing alongside Giannis is going to, kind of kill his usage. I don't think he's going to be nearly as productive of a player as he was last year on the Pelicans, just because he's, not going to have to do as much offensively. But still, 6,900 for Drew Holiday is a very low price tag. I mean, this was a guy that we were paying, 7, 8K, sometimes 9K for last year. I do like him here at 6,900. I think he's a little bit too cheap. The matchup against Boston is not ideal, but, just talent alone, I think Drew does stand out at 6,900. Other guys in the 6K range, Kobe White, I do have interest in against the Hawks. Very good matchup there. I mean, we know this Hawks team, not really good defensively. They usually are a team that plays fast. They played pretty fast last year. With Trae Young as their point guard, they're going to be a fast-paced team once again this year, I would assume. And Kobe White showed a ton of upside last year, especially late towards the season. He moved into the starting lineup. He was playing big minutes last year. I would assume that continues this year. And, the offense is going to run through Kobe White and Zach LaVine. Those are going to be the two guys you see do most of the scoring for this Bulls team. Lauri Markkanen will contribute as well. But at 6,500, definitely think Kobe White has, 40, 45-point upside in this matchup and can easily be, a solid play at a $6,500 salary. So he's a guy that stands out in the 6K range. Scrolling down, looking for some other guys. Eric Bledsoe on a new team on the Pelicans. We'll have to see how he gels. 5,600 for Bledsoe. Another guy that kind of feels a little bit too cheap. I do expect Bledsoe to have a solid year this year. With the Bucks last year towards the end, he wasn't doing much in the playoffs. He wasn't great in the playoffs. Didn't give you, big ceiling games. Rarely would you get more than 35 fantasy points from Bledsoe. But now that he's on a new team, things could definitely change. He could be used more offensively in the Pelicans offense. At 5,600, I know he's cheap on Yahoo as well at shooting guard. Bledsoe, I think is fine in that 5K range, someone that you could go to. LaMelo Ball, I think, is going to be a wait and see for me. I think this is going to be a guy that I wind up playing a good amount this year and maybe later on in the season. But right now, at the beginning of the year, he is expected to come off the bench. Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham are still the two starting guards for the Hornets. I think later on in the season, we could eventually see maybe LaMelo Ball pass up Terry Rozier and be the starting point guard for the Hornets. But while LaMelo Ball is coming off the bench, might be someone I stay away from, at least as of now. It's always tough to tell with these rookies early on in the season. It's tough to, feel confident in these guys just because we don't know exactly what their role is going to be, how many minutes they're going to play. I think LaMelo is probably going to be a wait and see for me, but later on in the year, he is definitely going to be a guy that, I probably have some interest in, especially, if he remains affordable. But, even scrolling down, looking for some value at point guard. There's not a ton of cheap plays that stand out. Kemba Walker's still out. He's still not healthy, so Jeff Teague is most likely going to be the starting point guard for the Celtics. Brad Wanamaker no longer on the Celtics, so, if Jeff Teague starts, he's only 4K. Milwaukee's a team that plays fast. They're really, really good defensively, but they do play at a fast pace. If we get word that Teague is starting, we should have the starting lineup most likely before lock. Teague could be a value play at 4K. I've played Jeff Teague a lot last year when he was with the Hawks, when he would get those random spot starts, and I feel like it never worked out. But maybe on a new team and a more efficient offense, Jeff Teague at 4K, if he starts, could be a guy we consider as a value option. But yeah, I think we kind of covered all the cheap plays that stand out. Obviously, guys, with it being 13 games, there's going to be players I skipped over that maybe you have interest in. If you want to comment down below any of your plays, I'll be sure to reply to the comments. As always, you can get behind the paywall over on Patreon, see all that I do have to offer over there, get access to my more up-to-date and in-depth content. You can get in our Discord chat as well, which is available for Patreon members. If that is something that does interest you, definitely check out the Patreon, link down below in the description. But moving on to shooting guard, looking at this position, not much really stands out at the top here. Devin Booker at 8,900 kind of feels like correctly priced. Bradley Beal at 8,500 as well. Playing alongside Westbrook, I don't think Beal's going to be nearly as big of like a usage monster as he was last year. Like we saw last season, late in the year before the season closed or got shut down. Early March, late February. Like Beal was just going out there and chucking the ball 25, 30 times a game, putting up 50, 60 DK points. That's obviously not going to be the case now with Westbrook on this team, but Beal could be a guy you look to maybe. I still don't think there's really much that stands out above 8K. Now, once you get below 8K, Zach LaVine is someone I do have interest in. 7,900 against the Hawks. Again, this Hawks team, going to be a team we want to attack. They're a bad defensive team. They play at a very fast pace. This Hawks-Bulls game is one game that I do like a lot. I think there's a lot of viable options on both sides. Normally I don't really game stack in NBA DFS. I just kind of play the guys I like, but LaVine could be a guy you look to, whether you want to play him just one-off or you want to game stack this game, which definitely makes some sense. I do like LaVine a lot here. We know he's just going to get a ton of usage. This offense is going to run through Zach LaVine. This is a guy that showed a lot of upside last year. He was priced, around the 9K range last season, and at 7,900, that's a discount for Zach LaVine when you factor in that he's facing the Hawks. So really good spot for him. I do like him in that 7K range. Scrolling down a little bit, Kobe White we talked about you could play. I do like a lot as well. Tim Hardaway Jr. I do want to mention. So both Tim Hardaway Jr. and Josh Richardson I think are guys we could look to. Obviously the offense is going to run through Luka, but these are secondary guys that we could see contribute and we should see contribute with Kristaps Porzingis out. Hardaway is 6K. Josh Richardson's only 5,300. I think if I had to choose one, I would probably actually rather play Josh Richardson. Now, last season, Josh Richardson didn't have a ton of fantasy value with the Sixers. He wasn't really a guy that would just go out there and do well most nights, but this is still a very good basketball player in my opinion. He's still, in my opinion, like he's one of the more underrated players in the league. Josh Richardson can defend really well. He can knock down shots. I like him a lot here at 5,300. He was playing well during the preseason for what that's worth. Now with no Porzingis, it's going to be Luka at the top, just demanding a ton on the offensive end. But obviously, some other guys are going to contribute, and that should be Josh Richardson. That should be Tim Hardaway Jr. The opportunity should be there, and at 5,300, I like him a lot on this Mavs team, and I like him. While Porzingis is out, I think the opportunity is going to be there for Richardson, and the minutes should be there as well as they're starting, shooting guard or small forward, wherever he winds up in the starting lineup. So definitely like Jay Ridge. I think Tim Hardaway's in play as well, but given the savings, I probably would rather go to Josh Richardson. Not much really else stands out in that 5K range. Like RJ Barrett, I think is a fine option at 5,700. This is a guy that I think we are going to see be a much better player this year. I think he's one of the guys that could definitely win like most improved player. Has a lot of upside. He's still he can score the ball. He can contribute kind of in all categories. Can give you rebounds. Can give you assists as well. Not the best matchup against the Pacers. Not the best game environment overall. This game right now does have one of the lower totals on the slate, but we should expect big minutes for RJ Barrett with Thibodeau as the coach. You're going to see a lot of these starters play big minutes on a nightly basis, and I assume Barrett would be one of them that does so. So you could look to him at 5,700. Again, not a guy that I would consider like a core play for me, but in tournaments, someone I would have in my player pool if I was playing multiple lineups. But like scrolling down in the 4K range, looking for cheaper plays at shooting guard. Not really much stands out. Like with Dennis Schroeder no longer on the the Thunder, with Schroeder and Paul no longer on the Thunder, I assume it'll be Diallo getting the start at shooting guard. I'm not exactly sure what OKC starting lineup will look like. It will probably be SGA, Diallo, Dort, Baisley, and then not Steven Adams, because Steven Adams isn't on the team. It would be Al Horford. Let me just double check that real quick. So yeah, it would probably be SGA, Diallo, Dort, Baisley, and then you would have Horford at the 5. So if Diallo starts, he's pretty cheap. He's only 4,200. He could be a guy you look to as a value play. Diallo, even when he would get minutes, didn't show a ton of upside last season. Like he would have some random spot starts. He would get solid minutes off the bench. This Thunder team, though, they're lacking talent. This is definitely a rebuilding team. They're going to be a team that, obviously SGA is going to be at the top and just getting all the usage, but there's going to be other guys that do contribute. I think Diallo at 4,200 could be someone you consider for value. Dort as well, I think is pretty cheap. Let me see if I can find Dort. I think he is shooting guard eligible. Yeah, Dort's only 3,800. Should continue to start for this Thunder team. No Chris Paul, no Dennis Schroeder. Like, there's going to be more opportunity for Dort. He's not really a high usage player, but we did see during the postseason last year in the bubble, like, he was out there taking a ton of shots. He was defending well. He can get those defensive stats. At 3,800, someone you could consider as a punt value play, but neither of those two guys look like core values, at least, as of now. I think there will definitely be better value that opens up probably as the day goes on, once we get starting lineups and stuff. But yeah, I think we covered shooting guards. So let's go ahead and move on to the small forward position. So not really much stands out at the top of the small forward position. Like Jason Tatum at 9,200. I don't know if Tatum's going to be like a core spend-up guy for me here. I think I would rather go to a guy like Luka, obviously. We'll talk about some of the expensive centers that are in good spots, like Joel Embiid gets to face the Wizards. Andre Drummond gets to face the Hornets without Kevin Love. Like, those are guys I'm probably going to consider over Jason Tatum. Tatum, obviously, a very talented player, has a ton of upside. Milwaukee, a good defensive team, but they do play fast. I don't think I'm really going to be spending up at small forward. Honestly, I think I'd rather play Ben Simmons in a way better matchup for cheaper. Really, I don't see myself really going to a ton of the guys at the top of this position, though. Like, I think there's plenty of good options in the mid-range. Gordon Hayward on this Hornets team now, I think Gordon Hayward is going to be a very productive player for the Hornets. He's obviously going to be somebody that they can run the offense through. Like, he should be a guy that probably puts up 35, 40 DK points most nights against the Cavs, a team that was very, very bad defensively last year, one of the worst defensive teams overall. It is a good spot for Gordon Hayward. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but at 6,600, could be a guy that you do look to in that mid-range of small forward. Tobias Harris as well. I think he's just underpriced. When Joel Embiid, when Ben Simmons are both healthy, I normally don't play Tobias Harris, but given the price tag and the good matchup against the Wizards, 6,200 is definitely a little bit too low of a price for Harris when you factor in how good of a spot it is against Washington. So he's fine. Josh Richardson, we talked about, I like a lot at 5,300. You could look to him at small forward. He does have eligibility at this position. But then scrolling down, looking for cheaper plays at the position, not really much stands out at small forward in terms of value. Like Diallo, we talked about, you could play here. You could play Dort here, who's also cheap. But I don't really see any core values at small forward, at least not as of now. Obviously things could change as I dive deeper into the slate on Wednesday and I post my content on Patreon. But for now, I think we kind of covered the small forward position. So let's go ahead and move on to power forward. This is where we have a lot of guys that I'm interested in, especially in the mid-range. But we'll talk about the top options first. You got Giannis at the top for 10,200. Look, we know what Giannis is. He's an incredibly productive player. He's matchup proof. The guy just is going to go out there and post big numbers every night. With no Eric Bledsoe and Drew Holiday taking his place, is that an upgrade for Giannis? Honestly, it probably is. Drew Holiday is a better player than Eric Bledsoe. He probably is more of a high usage player, but Drew Holiday can also make Giannis better, I feel like. And we know what Giannis is going to do, man. He's going to play solid minutes. He's not going to play massive minutes, but in a game like this that should be close, we should see Giannis probably get low 30s minutes. He's an incredibly productive player when he's on the floor. I would say behind Luka, he's probably like my second favorite guy at the top. I guess 10K and above. Like if I had to rank Luka, Harden, and Giannis, I would definitely go Luka number 1, Giannis 2, and then Harden 3. All those guys are viable. Those are 3 guys that you can pretty much play any night. But given the matchup, given the scenario with no Porzingis, Luka, I do give the edge to over Giannis tonight. But other power forwards, when we get to this mid-range, there's plenty of guys I like here. First, we'll start off with John Collins. So 7,600 on DK. I like that price tag a lot. He is also coming in very affordable on Yahoo, only $27 over there. So we do have word, or we've already gotten word that Clint Capella is doubtful for the Hawks. He is not expected to play. That is a pretty solid boost for John Collins. Capella was going to be the starting center for the Hawks. He will be when he's healthy. Collins is still their power forward, but we should see him play a good amount at center with Capella most likely going to be out. Obviously, they'll probably start Bruno Fernando at center if I had to guess. But Collins will get a lot of time at center, and he is very productive when he plays center minutes. It's a great matchup against the Bulls. This is a team that I targeted a ton last season with opposing bigs. Like in terms of defending power forwards and centers, in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position, the Bulls were one of the worst teams defending bigs last season, and I don't really expect much to change this year, given they didn't really change up their front court defensive-wise. It's still going to be Wendell Carter and Lauri Markkanen starting in the front court. So I like John Collins a lot. With no Clint Capella, that's a big boost for him, and 7,600 is too low of a price tag for John Collins when you factor in how good of a matchup it is against the Bulls. This was a guy that we were paying nearly $9K for last year, and now he's only $7,600 today with no Capella. So love me some John Collins in that mid-range. I think he really stands out. Domantas Sabonis I like a lot as well. Like, Sabonis is just someone that he just goes out there and just contributes every night. He's going to give you such a high floor. Like, rarely does Sabonis give you less than 40 fantasy points. Against the Knicks, a very favorable matchup. I would expect mid to low 30s minutes from Sabonis. He's probably going to give you 40 to 45 fantasy points. He's definitely too cheap at 7,400. Another guy that, was priced around the 9K range last year, and, he's only 7,400 today. I do like Sabonis quite a bit. I think I give the slight edge to John Collins because I like the matchup more for Collins, but do have interest in Sabonis at 7,400. Julius Randle for a Knicks team that just has really no talent. I expect Randle to play big minutes. I think the offense is going to run through Julius Randle. We're going to see him have very, very productive games this year. He should be a fantasy monster like he was last year. We saw Randle had 45, 50-point upside pretty much any night, and that should be the case once again this season. Only 6,900. Do have interest in Julius Randle. But then scrolling down, one guy that I really like in the 6K range, we'll talk about him, I guess, when he gets to center. I forgot he didn't have power forward eligibility, so we'll talk about him when we get to center. But other guys like in the 6K range, we talked about Tobias Harris that you could look to. Gordon Hayward has power forward eligibility as well. Al Horford, I think, is definitely going to be productive with his OKC team. He wasn't too productive last year with the Sixers. Whenever he was playing alongside Joel Embiid, that would just kill his fantasy value. Horford needs to be at center to be productive, and he's going to be the starting center for the Thunder. Without Steven Adams, it's going to be Horford's job, and this is a team that doesn't have much talent. It's going to be Horford, SGA, and Bazley kind of running the show for the Thunder this year, at least until they make some trades or something. I don't know what they're going to do, but Horford should be productive when he's on the court. As long as the game can stay close, he has plenty of upside. We saw when he was with the Celtics, when he was their starting center, this is a guy that could put up 35, 40 DK points any night, should get the minutes. And at 6K, I do have a lot of interest in Al Horford. I think he's someone I'll be looking to in that 6K range. We have already gotten word that Kevin Love is going to be out, so Larry Nance is expected to start in place of Kevin Love. And if you played NBA DFS last year, you know that whenever Larry Nance would get starts, the guy just goes out there and crushes. He's a very productive player when he gets the minutes, and with no Kevin Love, with him expected to start, I would assume Larry Nance probably sees at least 30 minutes, if not more. Really, really good matchup against the Hornets, another team that just can't defend bigs. The Bulls and the Hornets were two teams I targeted last year with opposing bigs, and I'm definitely going to be doing that once again this season. So at 5,900, wish he was a little bit cheaper, but I do have a lot of interest in Larry Nance now that Kevin Love is out, and now that it has been confirmed that Larry Nance will start in place of Kevin Love. But even scrolling down a little bit more, we're going to talk about a guy that I do like a lot in his 5K range, Darius Bazley, 5,100 on DK, and on Yahoo, I don't know what the hell Yahoo's doing, but Darius Bazley is minimum salary on Yahoo. I mean, he just looks like the best value play on the slate on Yahoo. At least as of now, he's someone that really stands out. But even on Draftkings at 5,100, I think Darius Bazley is a great play here. So with no Danilo Gallinari, with no Chris Paul, with no Dennis Schroeder, those are three pretty high usage players. And obviously with no Gallo, that frees up Darius Bazley to be the starting power forward for the Thunder this year. Their starting lineup is most likely going to be SGA, Diallo, Dort, Bazley, and Al Horford, like I stated earlier. And we saw last season, whenever Bazley would get minutes, whenever he would get, spot starts, this was a guy that would be very productive. He can score, he can rebound, he can double-double pretty much any night. Can kind of chip in with defensive stats as well. He's just a very productive player when he, gets big minutes. And now that he's going to be their starting power forward, I would assume we get probably mid to low 30s minutes from Darius Bazley on a nightly basis against Houston, a team that plays fast. I like to spot a lot for Darius Bazley. I think he's too cheap. I think this is going to be someone that we see his price rise as the season goes on. He's probably going to be priced in the 6K, close to the 7K range most of the year. And so we're getting a big discount on him now at just 5,100 on DK. And, on Yahoo, I mean, at minimum salary, I don't know how you get away from Darius Bazley. He's probably going to project for around 30 fantasy points today. And at minimum salary, that's a lock and load for me. He's going to be really chalky on Yahoo, but that is chalk that I am totally fine eating. There's just no reason that he should be that cheap now that he is their starting power forward. But yeah, I think we kind of covered the power forward position. Wait, there is one guy that I do want to talk about. So Lauri Markkanen as a value, I do like a lot on DraftKings. I think Lauri Markkanen is definitely too cheap today, only 4,800. I just think that's too cheap for marketing given the matchup against the Hawks. Like, I know this was a guy that was very disappointing last year. We saw towards the end of the year, like, he just wasn't very productive. He kind of tailored off, wasn't really doing much, would put up 20, 25 DK points most nights, really just didn't show much of a ceiling. But I think we're going to see Markkanen be a much more improved player this year. I think he has a chance to win the most improved player award. He played really well in the preseason. He was scoring, he was rebounding. Like, this was a guy that showed a lot of upside 2 years ago. At $4,800, I think that is too cheap of a price for Lauri Markkanen. He's still their starting power forward. Thaddeus Young is going to be out, so that frees up even more minutes in the front court for this Bulls team. Like we've already talked about, there's a lot of guys I like on both sides of this Hawks-Bulls game. I think Lauri Markkanen looks like a really good value at power forward. I think he is too cheap, and I don't know if that many people are going to look to him, so makes a really good tournament play. Could be a guy that you look to in GPPs for lower ownership. Like him a lot at $4,800 on DK, and then I think on Yahoo he's affordable as well. Oh, he's $23, so he's not as affordable, but I'll still consider him over there. At $23, he's probably going to be unowned, so a guy that I do like a lot in tournaments. But I think we kind of covered power forward. There could be some guys I skipped over that maybe you have interest in, but I'm just trying to hit on the guys that really stand out to me looking at this slate on Tuesday night. Do want to mention that with no Serge Ibaka, with no Marcus Gasol for the Raptors, those guys are on different teams now. It'll either be Chris Boucher or Aaron Baines starting at center for the Raptors. Whichever one starts, I have a lot of interest in, especially if it's Boucher. We saw Boucher last year when he would get minutes. The guy was incredibly productive. He's a fantasy monster. He's a guy that can give you over a fantasy point per minute. And if he does wind up being the starting center for the Raptors this year, even at $4,600, he's going to be a really good value play, especially in a matchup against the Pelicans. Really, really good spot for Chris Boucher. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to center. Let's talk about this position. So at the top, I do like Joel Embiid a lot here at home against the Wizards. Just such a good spot for Joel Embiid. This Wizard team, terrible defensively. Not a team we should be worried about on the defensive end. I mean, Thomas Bryant, not a good defender at all. We know this Wizards team was a team that played really fast as well. Last season, they were a very fast-paced team. I would expect that to continue this year. Like I said earlier, it's a fantastic spot for Joel Embiid. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. I think I'd probably I definitely would give the edge to Luka. Probably would give the slight edge to Giannis if I can find the salary to get up to Giannis. But I think of all the 9K guys, like from Embiid down to Damian Lillard, I think Embiid's definitely my favorite of all the 9K guys. I do like him quite a bit. Probably my third favorite stud on the slate behind Luka and behind Giannis. I do prefer Embiid over Towns and over Jokic. Towns was the guy that I played a lot last year. Maybe he won't be as productive this season. D'Angelo Russell is, healthy now. They did add Ricky Rubio as well. This Minnesota team does have some talent. They do have some guys that can score. I don't think Towns is nearly going to have to be relied on as heavily, I guess I should say. Like, he's not going to nearly have to handle as heavy of a workload as he did last year. But still, the guy's incredibly productive. He's a great fantasy, player overall. He's going to average probably 1.4, 1.5 fantasy points per minute. Should play big minutes. I think I'd just give the slight edge to Joel Embiid just because I like that matchup so much against Washington. But, scrolling down, Andre Drummond's a guy that I do like a lot. No Kevin Love, which is a boost for Drummond. At 8K against the Hornets, like this Hornets team, like I said earlier, was a team I just looked to attack last year when they would face opposing bigs because they just couldn't stop big men. They were a terrible rebounding team as well, and we know that is what Drummond really excels in. He's a great rebounder. He can give you those 20-20 games. He can get some defensive stats as well. The offense is going to run through Drummond. This Cavs team doesn't have much talent. Drummond should be very productive when he's on the floor. He should play pretty big minutes. This game should stay close. Really, all the boxes are checked, and he's not that expensive either. He's only 8K. That is a little bit too cheap for Drummond, factoring in the matchup and factoring in that Kevin Love is out. So I have a lot of interest in him. Him and Embiid, I think, look like two of the better, kind of spend-up options at center. Thomas Bryant is someone I want to talk about. On DraftKings, he's $7,200. I think that's probably, that's a correct price for Thomas Bryant. That's what he should be priced. But on Yahoo, Thomas Bryant is just way too cheap. I don't know what Yahoo's doing, but he's only $16 on Yahoo. Like, this was a guy that we saw priced close to $30 last year, especially, towards the end of the season when he started to get big minutes, when he started to play a very, heavy role. That should be the case this year. He's going to be their starting center, and this is a guy that can be incredibly productive when he gets minutes. My only worry is that against Philly, against Joel Embiid, that's a tough matchup, and Embiid is also a guy that can draw foul trouble. We know Thomas Bryant is someone that does struggle with fouls. He will, draw a lot of fouls, but he did have some big games against the Sixers last year. $16 is just too cheap for Thomas Bryant. Now that he's their starting center, and he's going to play the minutes. Like, he should not be that cheap, even in a tough matchup against Embiid. So, love Thomas Bryant on Yahoo at $16. On DraftKings at $7,200. A little bit tougher to pay that price for him. I think he's just kind of more of a tournament play, whereas on Yahoo, at his price there, I would probably consider him in cash games just because he's so cheap. But like Nurkic at $7K, I think you could look to find tournament play. Same with Julius Randle, who we talked about earlier. But the guy that I really like is Christian Wood, $6,300 on DK. I think that's just way too cheap for Christian Wood, man. I mean, I know he's on a different team now, but this was a guy that we saw priced around $8K last year. This is a guy that is incredibly productive when he gets minutes, and he should be the starting center for the Rockets. We don't exactly know what their starting lineup is going to look like. During the preseason, I think Christian Wood only played in one preseason game, and the one game that he did play in, DeMarcus Cousins was out, so we don't know yet if Cousins and Wood are going to start alongside each other, if it's just going to be Wood starting and Cousins backing him up. Either way, I do expect Christian Wood to start, and I would expect probably low 30s minutes, if not more. A fantasy point per minute player in a good matchup against OKC. I do like Christian Wood a lot at $6,300. I think he's very underpriced. On Yahoo, I think he looks really good over there as well. Coming in at a very affordable price tag, or he's power forward on Yahoo, I forgot. Very affordable price tag, $28. Like Christian Wood a lot on both sides. Definitely someone I'm going to be playing a ton this year, and I definitely want to be on him now while he's only $6,300 because his price is going to rise as the season progresses. I am very confident in that. So I do like Wood a lot. Horford, Larry Nance, we talked about, you could look to. Guys I do have some interest in. DeMarcus Cousins, I think if he starts at $5,400, is definitely in play. You know, if he comes off the bench, I'd be a bit worried about Cousins just because we don't exactly know how many minutes he's going to play off the bench, but he looked pretty good in the preseason. He was very productive when he got minutes. Like, he doesn't need a ton of minutes to pay off a $5,400 salary. Definitely have interest in Cousins, and I would like him even more if he does wind up starting. You know, I don't think they're going to start Wood and Cousins alongside each other, but they may. That's just something we'll have to wait and see on. But with Kristaps Porzingis out, there are some value plays we could consider at center. Do have Boban for $4,800. I doubt Boban starts, but if he were to start, he would be viable. But Maxi Kleber is really cheap. He's only $3,900. Definitely a guy I have interest in if he starts for Porzingis, which should be the case. He started for Porzingis last year whenever Porzingis would miss games, or most of the games that Porzingis was out, Kleber would start. So at $3,900, do like Kleber as a value play. Do have interest in either Aaron Baines or Boucher, which one of those two guys starts for the Raptors. I do like for value. Wendell Carter against the Hawks, really good matchup, only $4,400. Still their starting center, still probably going to play high 20s, low 30s in minutes. Definitely have interest in Wendell Carter against the Hawks. I think he's a very affordable, play today. Too cheap in my opinion, given the matchup. But yeah, that's probably it for center. I think we kind of covered everything at this position. I think we broke everything down. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I do appreciate you watching. Big 13-game slate tonight. Wanted to try and break it down as best as I could, and obviously, in a good amount of time. I didn't want to take too much of your time. I know on these big slates, I can kind of ramble. I'll be talking for 40, 45 minutes, but try to keep it somewhat reasonable for this 13-game. We're talking about the guys that I really had the most interest in and that stand out to me the most. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Appreciate you watching, guys. Hit that like button down below before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you have not yet, check out my exclusive content on Patreon. That's linked down below in the description. If that's something that does interest you, if you want to get more content from me, you can check out all that I do have to offer on Patreon. But best of luck tonight, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you win some money, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.